Welcome to the treasures of mishnayot. We are in mishnayot of Berachot in Perik Chet Mishna Dalad. The Mishnah begins, Beis Shammai Omrim, Beis Shammai say, Mechabedim et habayit. You're first going to sweep the house, V'achar kach notelin leyadayim, and afterwards you're going to wash your hands. Ubeit Hillel Omrim, and Beit Hillel say, Notelin leyadayim. First you're going to wash your hands. V'achar kach mechabadim et habayit, and afterwards you're going to sweep the house. Now we see over here clearly that there is a machloket between Beis Shammai and Beit Hillel. What do you do first? Do you sweep the house and then wash your hands? Or do you wash your hands and then sweep the house? Now Rabotai, to get a better understanding, let's see the biur of the Kahati on this Mishnah. We are in the treasures of Mishnayot in chapter 8, Mishnah 4. Biur Mishnah Dalad, this is the explanation of Mishnah Dalad. This is only an introduction. When we're going to get to the Mishnah itself, it's right over here, Rabotai, where the purple highlighted words are. This is the Mishnah itself, right, like usual, Rabotai. And the black, all this is the biur of the Kahati. But first, we're going to do the introduction to get a better understanding of what the machloket is between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Says the Kahati, Mishnatenu oseket benitilat yadayim. Our Mishnah is dealing with the washing of the hands, shelefnei birkat hamazon, which is before the blessing of birkat hamazon. Hanikreet Mayim Achronim, which is called Mayim Achronim. Now, if we go back to the Mishnah for a second, when Beis Shammai Omrim, when Beis Shammai say, Mechabadim et habayit, we first sweep the house, V'achar kach notlin leyadayim, and afterwards we're going to wash our hands. Do you know what kind of washing of the hands we're speaking about? Not for the bread meal, but for Birkat Hamazon, which is called Mayim Achronim Chova. Now, according to the letter of the law, halachically speaking, when it comes to washing Mayim Achronim, a lot of people, they do it up to the first knuckle, right? Only the fingertips. That's a very big problem. Rabotai, if you do Mayim Achronim like that, you're not yotzeh. Mayim Achronim has to be done up until, Rabotai, the knuckle right over here. So basically, you're going to go from the finger all the way over here, Rabotai. This is Mayim Achronim. Same thing over here. This is Mayim Achronim, Rabotai. So you have basically the third knuckle. So it's 1, 2, 3. By the third, right? 1, 2, 3. By the third knuckle. Right over here, Rabotai. That's how you have to do Mayim Achronim. That's why if you are ever found by a table, and they give you those small Mayim Achronim cups, that's a problem, Rabotai. How much can you get covered on your finger? Especially on the table, you're going to get the whole table dirty. So usually the best thing to do is to get up and wash the Mayim Achronim by the sink. Nevertheless, Rabotai, to get back into our Mishnah, this is the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. When do you wash the Mayim Achronim? Do you wash the Mayim Achronim prior to sweeping the house or after sweeping the house? And this is what they're arguing in. Our Mishnah deals with the washing of the hands prior to blessing the blessing of Birkat Hamazon, which is called the final waters. Mayim Achronim Chova. Doing the final waters, that is an obligation on a person. And that's how we hold halachically. In Masechet Eruvin is brought down. What is the reason that the Chachamim stated that the final waters, it is an obligation for us to wash it before we bless Birkat Hamazon? Because of the salt which is from Sodom, that you have, that it is able to blind a person's eye. He brings this down from Masechet Eruvin Daf Yud Zayin Amud Bet. Umifarish Rashi, and Rashi explains, Shekin Amru Chachamim Masechet Berachot Daf Mem Amur Aleph. So too the rabbis of blessed memory said in Masechet Berachot on page 40, side 1, Acher Kol Achilatecha Echol Melech. Today we don't have this, but back then, Rabotai, they did not necessarily have salt in their food. So what would they do when they would eat something? They would take their finger, they would dip it into the salt, and then eat the salt, in order to give taste to the food. So that's the way Rashi explains over there. After every eating, eat salt. Because of the salt that a person dips in it, his finger, Tiknu Mayim Achronim, the rabbis of blessed memory, they instituted the final waters. Now, before we do continue, we have to try to understand what is going on over here. Why is it so important to wash the Mayim Achronim? Now you have to remember that, let's go according to the Gemara Masechet Berachot, or according to the Gemara Masechet Eruvin, where, let's say, if there would be the Melech Sodomit, it would able to have the effect to make a person blind. Now, just imagine for yourself for a second. You went ahead and you placed your finger into the salt and you ate it. Not every single grain of salt that's on your finger is already in your mouth. Sometimes you have salt that gets left behind, like a residue. Now, what's going to end up happening? You might, after you bench Birkat Hamazon, you might go ahead now, throughout the day, whatever it might be, or even 5 minutes later, you might try to scratch your eye inside. What's going to end up happening? That salt is going to be able to blind you. So we don't want that to happen. So that's what they instituted Mayim Achronim. And that's what the rabbis of blessed memory said. It's an obligation because of the sakana that's involved. We'll see right now that we don't have this danger. Nevertheless, the halacha states, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you must do Mayim Achronim. Even women, Rabotai, even children, for chinuch purposes, for educational purposes. Before we do continue, Rabbi Eli Mansour Shlita one time was teaching this piece of Mayim Achronim, and that how important it is to do it, because if a person, might eat peppers or salt or something, is going to get stuck on his fingers, and then he's going to touch his eye, then he's going to become blind, he's going to burn his eye. So there was a student in his class that said, come on, Rabbi, this is so far-fetched. The rabbis, they go to the greatest extreme. When is this ever going to happen? Rabotai, listen to this. Whenever you question the Chachamim, you should know it's coming your way. That day, Rabotai, this student went to eat pizza. Mind you, he used to wear contact lenses. They went to eat pizza. You put the red pepper, the hot pepper on the pizza. That spice. Now, while he was doing it, he thought he put a lot of pepper on his spice, so he started cleaning it out with his hands, not paying attention that one of the peppers got stuck on his finger. While he was having the pizza, his eye started to itch. So he thought that the contact lens is coming, it's moving from side to side. So he wanted to fix it. Rabotai, the pepper that was on the finger got stuck to the pepper on his eye. It was burning his eye that they had to take him into an emergency room. You see, Rabotai, how severe it is. It's not only for them back then. Yet today we don't have salt that's going to blind you. Nevertheless, Rabotai, the Shulchan Aruch says, you must wash Mayim Achronim. Okay. Continues the Kahati. The Kahati says, after we saw right now that Mayim Achronim is an obligation, Baram, however, he says, Baalei HaTosfot Kotvim, the Baalei HaTosfot, they write, Achshav lo nahagu b'Mayim Achronim. Now, Rabotai, some Ashkenazim do have this custom of not doing Mayim Achronim. They do have the custom, Rabotai. I'll be straightforward with you. Again, halachically, we don't hold like them. There are other Achronim that argue even on this Baalei HaTosfot. So therefore, again, halachically, we must do it. Nowadays, we don't have the custom to do Mayim Achronim. Why? Because the salt from Sodom is not found amongst us. We don't have it. Ve'od, and furthermore, another reason why you don't have to do Mayim Achronim. Lefi she'en anu regilim litbol ez be'otenu be'melech achar achilam. Because we're not accustomed to dipping our fingers into the salt after eating food, like I explained earlier. So therefore, says the Balei Tosfot, Mayim Achronim, the custom is not to do it today. Mikol makom, nevertheless, that a poskim he, the opinion of the poskim is, shegam bezman hazeh, that even nowadays, in today's time, ra'ui v'nachon liyitol yadayim lifnei birkat hamazon. It is proper and correct to wash your hands, meaning to do Mayim Achronim prior to saying the blessing of birkat hamazon. Why? Kedei la'avir et azuhma sha'alehem. In order to remove the filth of the food which is on your hands. Ve'levarech birkat hamazon, and to bless birkat hamazon b'nikiyut yadayim, with the cleanliness of one's hands. V'chen amru Masechet Berachot Daf Nun Gimel Amud Bet, and so too it was stated in Masechet Berachot on page 53, side 2, Kishem shemizohamam posel avodah b'mikdash. Just like if they had filth on their hands, it would disqualify their service in the Beit HaMikdash. Kach yadayim, so too a person's hands, mizohamot, if they are filthy, if they are dirty, poselet lebracha, it disqualifies it for the blessing, meaning lebrakat hamazon, meaning to say that if you have residue on your hands, you're not allowed to bless birkat hamazon. V'samchu ala katuv, and they relied on the verse which is brought down in Vayikra in Perik Yur Aleph Pasuk Mem Dalet. V'tkadeshetim v'hitem kedoshim. It says of that you should sanctify and you should be holy. What is that going on, that verse? Elu Mayim Achronim. When you do Mayim Achronim, you become kadosh, you become holy. And then when it says in the pasuk, when it continues and it says, Ani Hashem Elokechem, that I am Hashem your God, that is referring to zo bracha. That is referring to the blessing of birkat hamazon. Says the Kahati, Koloimar, sheyesh litkadesh ulitaher libirkat hamazon. A person needs to sanctify himself. A person needs to purify himself for birkat hamazon. How do you do it? You do it by washing Mayim Achronim chova. Now, Rabotai, that was the introduction. Now we're going to go ahead and see the Mishnah itself. Begins the Mishnah. Now we're going to see the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai Omrim, Beit Shammai say, Mechabedim et habayit. We sweep the house. Now, how do I know the word Mechabedim et habayit means to sweep? Rabotai, because it says over here, Matateim et pirurei ha'ochalim. Right away, Rabotai, this word over here, Matateim, means to sweep. Et pirurei ha'ochalim, the crumbs of the food, mina makom, from the place, shachlu sham, that you ate over there. Ve'achar kach notlin liyadam, and afterwards you're going to go ahead and you're going to wash your hands, meaning Mayim Achronim lifnei birkat hamazon. You're going to do Mayim Achronim before birkat hamazon. Now, why is this so important according to Beit Shammai to first sweep the house and then do birkat hamazon? Now, Rabotai, let me just give you a small introduction. If you guys are paying attention how we're doing the mishnayot, we did this earlier, but I'll just give it as a brief introduction. Today, Baruch Hashem, we eat on tables. We have chairs. Back then, they used to eat on boards. And they used to sit on mattresses. They used to lie down. So, when they would do the Mayim Achronim, what would end up happening is that if there was pieces of bread on the floor and you would do Mayim Achronim, those pieces of bread could become dirty. Now you would add and you damage the bread, meaning nobody's going to want to eat it. It's disgusting to eat it. Therefore, Beit Shammai says, first remove the bread, then do Mayim Achronim. So now if the Mayim Achronim is going to fall on the floor, you're not going to have to be concerned. Maybe it's going to make the bread disgusting. Nevertheless, Rabotai, you might say, Rabbi, sir, maybe it doesn't apply in our case today. It still applies. If you are that type of person that does the Mayim Achronim on the table, you're going to have to go ahead and you're going to also have to apply these rulings of what we're going to say according to Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. If you want to say that I'm eating on the table like we do today, and I have bread around me, I cannot do Mayim Achronim over there. I can't even do Mayim Achronim where there are foods. Because if the water is going to go there, I'm going to be disgusted. I'm not going to eat it. So what am I doing right now, Rabotai? I'm making me lose that food. I'm damaging the food, which we don't want to do. So Rabotai, just like we are able to apply it back then to their situation where they used to eat on a mattress and on a board, we could apply it to our chair and our table. We're going to see, Rabotai, in this case, the halakha is going to be like Beit Shammai. That before you're going to do Mayim Achronim in the house, after eating the bread, you have to make sure the area around what you're doing Birkat Hamazon must be clean from food. We'll see this, Rabotai, as we go along. Says Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai say, Mechabadim et habayit, we sweep the house. Again, he brings it down over in the Kahati. Matateim et pirurei ha'ocholim, you're going to sweep up the crumbs of the food, mina makom shachlu sham, from the place that you ate over there, meaning remove the food. Ve'achar kach notlin liyadam, and afterwards you're going to wash your hands, meaning what are you going to do? You're going to do Mayim Achronim lefnei Birkat Hamazon. You're going to do the final waters before Birkat Hamazon. Now, why? Now, if you're going to go out and you're going to wash your hands while the pirurim are still found there, meaning that let's say they are either on the table according to us or on the floor according to them, Shema maybe yinetunu alahem min hamayim veyamusu. Maybe what's going to end up happening that when you're going to do Mayim Achronim, the water is going to go on these pirurim, on these crumbs of food or crumbs of bread, and they're going to become disgusted. And since at times you also have over there crumbs of bread, meaning pieces of bread that they have the size of 1 ounce, with this you are destroying the food. So therefore says Beit Shammai, before you're going to do Mayim Achronim, make sure you clean out the area where you are eating. In their days, they would clean out the area since they would eat it on the board. Today, Rabotai, since you eat on the table, you're going to have to clean out the area where you're doing Mayim Achronim. Sometimes you see almost all the time, Rabotai, when people do Mayim Achronim, Rabotai, it's nasty. Right? They take it, they wash it, it's not even next to the cup, it's like, up this high away from the cup. And now, Rabotai, the water spritches. And then they pass the water over and then this spills, that spills. Rabotai, you have to be very careful not to destroy food unnecessarily. So that's what Beit Shammai is telling us. Beit Shammai is telling us over here, first you're going to go ahead, you're going to sweep the house, meaning you're going to remove the crumbs of bread or the food around the place where you ate, and only then are you going to do Mayim Achronim. However, came Beit Hillel disagrees. Beit Hillel say, no, 1 second. Why? First, Beit Hillel says, you're going to wash your hands, meaning you're going to do Mayim Achronim first. And afterwards, after I bench Birkat Hamazon, after I say the blessing of Birkat Hamazon, and afterwards I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean out the area where I ate. Now, Rabotai, what is the reason to the machloket of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? Why are they disagreeing? Says the Kahati, Shesovrim Beit Hillel held, you don't have to be concerned that you're going to destroy the food. Why? Because if you have crumbs of bread over there, meaning if you have pieces of bread over there that are 1 ounce, Hashamash melkatem lefnei nitila. The shamash, the attendant, the waiter, he removes them, he gathers them, and he removes them before the washing of the Mayim Achronim. But what happens when you have the pieces of bread where they don't have 1 ounce in them, even if they're going to become disgusted, Mayim Achronim, because of the final waters, and bikach it's not a problem. Why? Because you are allowed to destroy bread if it's less than a kazayit. Now, Rabotai, I want to just try to clarify here something very important. The halakha says you're never allowed to throw away bread if it's more than a kazayit. That's asur. Less than a kazayit, you are allowed to throw it. So, for example, if a person has bread in his house, now he wants to get rid of the bread, you're going to have to break it up less than 1 ounce, and then you can throw it in the garbage. But Rabotai, there's a very big problem with this. The Gemara brings down that a person who does this, even though it's allowed to destroy bread if it's under 1 ounce, that's a guarantee you're going to become poor. A person who destroys bread, even though it's under 1 ounce, even though halakha allows you, it's guaranteed it's going to bring a person to poverty. That's why, Rabotai, you have to be very careful with even crumbs of bread. A lot of times you have the father of the house cut the bread, correct? And then the bread falls on the floor. What do, Rabotai? We walk over it, we don't even pay attention to it. That's a very big problem. There is a very fascinating Ben Ish Chai. Again, this is not the class for this, but I gotta tell you because we are in this sugya. There is a fascinating Ben Ish Chai. He states, how could it be that you have husbands that are working all day, and the wives, let's say they're sitting home all day, taking care of the kids, the household, which is another job unto itself. How does the Torah state that the blessing of the husband, meaning the husband's parnasa, is dependent on the wife? How? If the husband is really working and she's not working, meaning she's not getting paid for her job, so how is the parnasa coming because of her? Says the Ben Ish Chai, since women are the ones that sweep up the crumbs and they make sure you don't step over it, she's protecting your financial status. Once she's protecting your financial status, it is because of her you're being blessed. You see that, Rabotai? That's what I'm trying to tell you over here. That even though, according to the letter of the law, you're allowed to get rid of bread which is under 1 ounce, nevertheless, you're guaranteed to become poor. So you're asking me, Rabbi, what do I do? Very simple. Always use a clean plastic bag. Show respect to the bread. Put it in a bag, tie it up, and throw it in the garbage. So Rabotai, back into our Mishnah. So we see over here that according to Beit Hillel, the reason why he said you could do Mayim Achronim, and afterwards you could go ahead and sweep up the house, meaning remove the bread, whatever is left, because Beit Hillel held you don't have to be concerned that the food is going to get destroyed. Why? Because number one, if you had bread over there which has 1 ounce, you should be rest assured that the shamash, the attendant, already gathered them before you even did the Mayim Achronim. What happens if you have bread over there which is under 1 ounce? Not a problem. Even if they become destroyed, they become disgusted because of the final waters, not a problem. Why? Because you are allowed to destroy bread under 1 ounce with your own hands. Continues the Kahat and he says, in the Beraita in the Gemara it's explained, the main machloket of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel in our Mishnah is, are you allowed to use an attendant, a waiter, who is an Am Haaretz, who is an ignoramus? Beit Hillel Sovrim, Beit Hillel held, it is forbidden for one to use a waiter who's an Am Haaretz. But now that I'm not using an ignoramus as a waiter, I'm using a Talmid Chacham as a waiter. So therefore, a Talmid Chacham is not going to leave pieces of bread that they have a kazait on them. Rather, the Talmid Chacham is going to remove them before the washing of the hands for Mayim Achronim. Therefore, says Beit Hillel, therefore I am not concerned or there isn't any concern to destroying the food. So we see about according to Beit Hillel, the reason why he told you you're allowed to do Mayim Achronim, and then after Birkat Hamazon you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to remove the bread, meaning the pieces under 1 ounce, is because he holds you're not allowed to use a waiter who's an ignoramus. You have to use a Talmud Chacham as a waiter. A Talmud Chacham as a waiter knows you're not allowed to destroy food if it's over 1 ounce. He's going to clean it up before you do Mayim Achronim. So therefore he is not concerned. That's what he tells you. You first do Mayim Achronim, and only then do you go ahead and clean up the food. Aval, however, Beis Shammai Sovrim, Beis Shammai held, Mutar l'ishtamesh b'shamash ha'ma'arj. You are allowed to use an attendant, a waiter, who is an ignoramus. V'yesh efo chashash. There is therefore a concern. Shema yaniach pirurim. Maybe he's going to leave pieces of bread. Sheyesh bahem kazai, that they do have 1 ounce in them. V'yamusu machmat hamayim achronim, and they're going to become disgusting because of the final waters. Hilkach said Beis Shammai, Tzarich letatei techil et hapirurim. First you need to sweep, meaning first you need to remove the pieces of bread. Ve'acher kach liyitol Mayim Achronim. And afterwards you're going to go ahead and you're going to wash Mayim Achronim. Ve'amru b'Gemara, Rabotai, listen to this fascinating line. And it was stated in the Gemara, Bechol Parakenu, in this whole chapter, Halakha ki Beit Hillel, halakha is Beit Hillel. Whenever there's a machloket between Beis Shammai and Beit Hillel, the halakha is going to be like Beit Hillel. Chutz mi Mishna zo, except this Mishnah, shehalakha ba ki Beis Shammai. The halakha in it is like Beis Shammai. So Rabotai, in this whole chapter that we're learning, where there is a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, halakha is going to be like Beit Hillel. But over here, when it comes to Mayim Achronim and removing the bread, do we follow the opinion of Beit Hillel or do we follow the opinion of Beit Shammai? The halakha Rabotai is going to be like Beit Shammai in this particular Mishnah. Meaning to say that before you do Mayim Achronim, you have to make sure that the area where you ate, it has to be clean from bread, because we do not want to destroy any food unnecessarily. Summary of Mishnah 4. This Mishnah discusses the order of Mayim Achronim, washing the hands before Birkat Hamazon, and cleaning the eating area. The sages thought that Mayim Achronim is obligatory, originally because of the danger of sodomite salt, which could blind a person if it remained on the fingers and touched the eyes. Although the Tosfot write that this danger is no longer common, most halachic authorities maintain that Mayim Achronim should still be practiced. Besides the original reason, it removes dirt from the hands, so that one recites Birkat Hamazon with clean hands, fulfilling the idea of sanctifying oneself before blessing Hashem. The dispute. Beis Shammai say, first sweep away the food crumbs, then wash Mayim Achronim. Their concern is that the water may make edible crumbs disgusting and cause food to be wasted. Beit Hillel, on the other hand, says, first wash Mayim Achronim, then sweep the floor. They explain that any crumbs larger than a kazait would already have been collected by a careful waiter, and crumbs smaller than a kazait may be discarded. The Gemara's explanation to why Beis Shammai and Beit Hillel argued. The real disagreement is whether one may rely on an unlearned waiter. Beis Shammai permit using such a waiter, so there is concern that edible crumbs may remain on the floor. Therefore, the floor should be cleaned before washing. Beit Hillel assume one uses a knowledgeable waiter who removes significant crumbs beforehand, so washing first is not a problem. Halakha. Although throughout this chapter the halakha generally follows Beit Hillel, this Mishnah is the exception. The halakha follows Beit Shammai, meaning the crumbs are swept away before performing Mayim Achronim. Now, Rabotai, we're going to see the Mishnah. Mishnah Dalet Perik Chet. Beis Shammai omrim, Beis Shammai say, mechabadim et habayit, we first sweep the house, meaning we remove the food from the place where we ate, and afterwards we're going to go ahead and we're going to wash our hands from Mayim Achronim before we say Brikat HaMazon. The reason being so is because we do not want to destroy the food unnecessarily. Ubeit Hillel omrim, and Beit Hillel say, you know, you're first going to wash your hands from Mayim Achronim before Brikat HaMazon, and afterwards you're going to go ahead and you're going to sweep the house from the edible foods. Beit Hillel was not concerned that the Mayim Achronim is going to go on the food and is going to destroy the food. The reason being is because Beit Hillel learned that the waiter would already remove a bread which is the size of an ounce, a kazait. So therefore, that's not a concern. But you might tell me, Rabbi, but 1 second, what about bread under a kazait? Not a problem. According to the letter of the law, you are allowed to destroy bread under a kazait. Nevertheless, it's a segula chas v'shalom to become poor. But, says Beit Hillel, since according to the letter of the law, you're allowed to destroy pieces of bread which are under 1 ounce, so therefore, if a person is doing Mayim Achronim and it goes on pieces of bread which is under 1 ounce and it gets destroyed, no problem, because you are allowed to do so. The Gemara explained that the real machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beit Hillel is in what type of waiter are you allowed to use. Beis Shammai learned you are allowed to use an amaretz as a waiter. Beit Hillel said no, you are only allowed to use a waiter who's a Talmud Chacham. Since Beis Shammai learned that you are allowed to use an amaretz as a waiter, he's not going to know to remove the 1 ounce of bread from the table. That's why Beis Shammai says, first sweep away the bread, meaning remove the bread and only then do Mayim Achronim. However, Beit Hillel said that you're not allowed to use an amaretz. You only can use a Talmud Chacham. If you could only use a Talmud Chacham, the Talmud Chacham knows that 1 ounce of bread needs to be removed before people do Mayim Achronim, so the bread is already removed. So therefore you are allowed to go ahead and do Mayim Achronim, even though you have over there bread which is under 1 ounce, because under 1 ounce you are allowed to technically destroy with your hands. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen.